Welcome back to the Restore podcast with me, Owen Walker. In this episode, I'm speaking with Inge Hunter on homelessness to entrepreneurship. So, in the episode, we're really going to dig into Inge's organic story into entrepreneurship and how, indeed, she's transformed her formative struggles from homelessness into a thriving career. So, from the humble beginnings of selling cocktails on the streets to founding Clue Content, her marketing company, Inge's journey is a testimony to resilience and indeed innovation. So, we're going to explore her transition from mobile bars to wedding planning and indeed her successes in consultancy and how she's harnessed AI in marketing. We're also going to look at how she balances entrepreneurship with motherhood, her passion for helping small businesses, and indeed her future. Inge, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you on. And I just wondered if we could just bring you back to childhood, actually. And doing a bit of research on your story and your background, it seems to be really one of the most difficult periods of your life, of being homeless at 17. Could you maybe take us back there and what that looked like?
Yeah, start at the beginning. So, I was a young homeless person. Before that's all really messy. So I always start from homelessness onwards. I just sort of found myself in a position where I wasn't at home. I was on the streets for a couple of nights, and my college sort of found out that I wasn't doing very well. And within a day, got whisked off to a council office, giving care papers, had my bin bag full of stuff, and ended up on a young girls' homeless hostel doorstep. And it was a huge pivotal point in my life, not for necessarily all of the negative things that gets associated with homelessness, but for the freedom. So it was the first time in my life where I'd actually felt like I could be me, do what I wanted to do, totally free. The room that I was in was horrible and manky, but it was mine. And from that point on, I just felt like I've sort of thrived ever since. The experience was, one that you'd expect. I lived underneath prostitutes, lived across the door from drug dealers. Lots of very predatory men used to hang outside because it was a only women hostel. But the support workers were very helpful. I did continue with my studies, and I decided to start selling cocktails to make money, because one of the things I think people don't understand about homelessness is you still have to pay for things when you're in a hostel. So you do still have to pay rent, you do still have to pay to use a washing machine, and you get given a little bit through benefits, but because you're under 18, the benefits aren't very good. So I ended up with sort of £4 a week to live on, but the bus to college was either £3.60 a day or an hour's walk there, an hour walk back. So very quickly had to figure out ways to make money. And I think the sort of the spark and start of the entrepreneurialness was definitely more out of necessity rather than anything else. But you soon learn in those situations very quickly how to make money in lots of various different ways. I just chose entrepreneurship.
No, listen, that's fantastic. And let's go there around adaptability and versatility, because like you said, sometimes it's out of inspiration and innovation. Sometimes it's out of necessity, as you were saying. So could you maybe speak to, indeed, sort of transitioning from selling cocktails, so street cocktails, was that successful, and how did that look, to a mobile bar, and what was the thought process there? And then how did that start to shape your understanding of business and indeed adaptability?
Yeah, so I started selling cocktails on the street. So I don't know if anyone knows much about Cambridge, but Cambridge have May balls every year. Huge, big parties, loads and loads of students. But the students are always queuing for about 2 hours along the streets of Cambridge to be able to get in. And I knew how to get hold of alcohol. Everyone does when you're underage. I decided, right, what are these? How can I? There's a whole bunch of people here. I used to sit and watch them, and I think, oh my God, I can definitely sell to them. Like, I used to think, sort of, it came from a little bit of a jealousy, maybe, like, you're stood in this queue going this amazing party, I'm homeless, I'm just sat here looking at you in your lovely dress, I'm going to make money out of you. And so shook up manky Long Island iced teas, and put them in milkshake containers, and went up and down the queues and sold them for £15 a cocktail. Once I realized that worked, I used to then go outside the nightclubs, and people, again, still similar situation, queuing, waiting to get in. What does everyone want when they're queuing? Alcohol. And Cambridge is one of the only counties or cities in the country, I think, where you're legally allowed to still drink on the streets. So I used to put a whole bunch in manky Tesco bags, hide them behind walls, and go up and down selling them and I'd be like, if you want one, why aren't you buying one for your friends? And but after a little while, I turned 18, I got my license, and the people that I was getting the alcohol from all owned bars, and they would have people going over the bar to them saying, oh, I've got a party, I've got this, can you come and do cocktails? And these guys weren't interested. They were only interested on their kind of footfall traffic, things that were coming, people that were coming in and out of the bar. And so because I already had that relationship, I was very much like, yeah, I'll do it. Like at the time, it was just a say yes to anything, figure it out later. And so I transitioned from selling cocktails on the street to selling cocktails at events and running a mobile bar. I bought really, really heavy steel bar. Used to just sort of drag it around, but I kind of knew that by saying yes to things, it opens up the doors for opportunity that and if you can't do it, you then just turn around and say, oh, sorry, I couldn't pull through. What's the worst that's going to happen, But it was a journey, but it was great fun.
No, listen, and actually, that's part of the growth mindset. I think is saying yes and figuring it out later. It's certainly something which I've lived by as well. So you're starting to, you've moved from selling cocktails on the street to a mobile bar, maybe indeed a fixed position within festivals and otherwise, with a substantial markup on cocktails. So let's just fast forward to the education, because I think, and quite rightly so, you kind of backed some of your anecdotal experience in business up with education in the background. So you started to pursue a degree in business and indeed marketing. Could you sort of walk us through that thought process?
Yeah, so this whole thing is around about 3 years, 2-3 years of my life, all bundled into the same bit. So at the same time as doing all of that, I was still at uni. So, I wasn't at uni at the time. I was doing my sixth form. And then from sixth form, I'd already started a company, but I decided to go and study psychology in London, which I only did for a year because my bar in Cambridge was already thriving. So I was already always coming back. And I wanted to... I did that because even though even though I was sort of homeless and in that position, my family are all very well educated. I came from, not a bad background. And so in my head, that was what you do. No matter what you might be doing on the side or the circumstance, you do go and get an education. And so, I came back to Cambridge because I needed to for the business. Wanted to carry on with my studies of psychology, but couldn't transfer my credits. So decided to do a degree in business management and marketing, which I thought would really, really help me with my business. I think degrees are much better now, but at the time it was just theory and wasn't very helpful. The only thing that was helpful was towards the end of my degree, I'd been running this mobile bar for a while, and I was in a position where I was going to buy one of the bars in Cambridge totally outright, make it mine. And so I did my dissertation on the viability of buying a cocktail bar in Cambridge, which told me not to do it. So I didn't do it. But I still managed to come out of uni with a first, just because I don't think I'm very good at sitting still.
No, indeed. Well, it's interesting you say that because, like you said, there's this real world application, and there's concepts which you can pull through, and there's concepts you can't. But you've got to, like you said, it's got to be actionable. The education fundamentally has to be actionable. You have to pull things through that work and that work for you. So at this time, Inge, could you maybe speak to? Were you starting to become a mother? Was motherhood on the cards at this time, or was this later? Because let's go chronologically and sequentially. So let's go for finishing so you're finishing university, you're doing these mobile bars. Talk us through some pivotal business decisions at this time and what was next in the business before we visit motherhood.
Okay, so one of the big decisions was to come back to Cambridge instead of continuing with my education in London. I didn't go to Cambridge. Cambridge went to, Anglia Ruskin, the Poly. But that was a big thing because it meant that I could continue to run my company, but whilst building a local network. So at the time, I'd just been building it based on people who I knew in the industry. They were passing me contacts, but actually the decision to come back was a decision to also integrate myself into the wider business network locally, so I could pick up business from actual event people, actual wedding people, actual sort of people that were having these events, companies that were putting events on. So that was one of the key decisions. And another one of the key decisions that I guess did come off the back, the only thing maybe off the back of the university degree, was a double down focus on my branding. So we did a module on branding, and this guy started, everything in the world is branded and you can't think of anything that doesn't have a brand. I rightly pointed out to him that apples aren't branded. And he was like, no, they are. You get your, Royal Gala, you get your Brave. And I was like, no, they're types of apple. There's not a brand of apple. But it did open my mind to think, oh shit, if I really want this to grow properly, it's all really well and good knowing people and turning up and doing a good job, but actually people buy into a brand, they buy into a culture. So that was the first learning and turning point into growing more brand-led businesses rather than just doing what I did.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so let's go there actually, and let's look at business consultancy, because I think you started to pivot into brand consultancy and indeed business consultancy. So for over 5 years, or over indeed a span of time, you've kind of helped thousands, or if not hundreds of small businesses with marketing and growth. Could you maybe speak to? It's a progressive revelation, like you said, as to what works, what doesn't work. It's also iterative, and sometimes things have to fail and or succeed for you to really find a path through. Could you maybe speak to that iterative business consultancy experience you started to gain at that time?
Yeah, I mean, the mobile, in terms of what happened, the selling cocktails on the street turned into a mobile cocktail bar. The mobile cocktail bar, after I'd finished uni, turned into events company and wedding company, because I was to turn up with my bar and realised that there was no other organisation at the event at all. And so I would take that on. But I got to a point where I was planning weddings for brides who were spending, 500,000 on their wedding, these oil broker daughters. And I managed to get to that point, all honestly through the adoption of social media, good branding, good visibility. And so people in the industry had started asking me, how do you do that? How do you get a client that's going to spend that much money off of Instagram? And so I started sort of helping people, consulting people, because I think, because of the way that I started my businesses, I fundamentally believe that there shouldn't be any barriers to entry. It shouldn't be lack of knowledge that stops you growing a business. It should be perhaps, I don't know, lack of a good idea or lack of perseverance, but not knowledge. Knowledge should be free. Everyone should have it. So I moved into consultancy. I did start to charge. I didn't give my consultancy for free because there has to be an exchange as well. But I moved, into consultancy of smaller companies in the industry, but then more broadly, wider, more corporate setups who couldn't figure out how to do marketing well to attract the right kind of clients or sales. But ultimately, it all comes down to people. And if you can understand, I think that's where the blend of my psychology degree comes in. If you can understand people and what makes them tick, then you can sell anything. I knew that those people standing in the queue outside of waiting to get in their May ball for 2 hours, They all needed alcohol. They didn't need anything else. Everything was free on the inside. If you understand what they actually need, you can create something that you can sell to them. You know, all these events that I turned up to with my bar, there was no organization. I'd be the only ones that were there. You know, they create something they need the organization, I'll create the company around that. So the consultancy came from all of the understanding of getting to know what people need, not what they tell you they need, but what they actually need.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And to your point, you know, meeting people at point of need. But I think the real skill is seeing the need. And like you say, seeing the need where other people don't perceive the need. And then fulfilling that gap, product market fit fundamentally to need. So true to say, the more successful you get, the busier you get. And you pivoted from selling cocktails on the street to mobile bars, progressively into marketing and consultancy, but stopped on the way of wedding planning, or indeed servicing weddings with alcohol and otherwise. Let's go to motherhood, because I think one of the things I'd like to emphasize and tease out of you is the fact you're starting to become an extremely successful entrepreneur, and trying to juggle successful entrepreneurship with motherhood is juggling motherhood is tricky in any which way anyway. But then as things are really taking off for you, you become a mother. Talk us through that.
It was a surprise. So my firstborn was actually at university. So she came in the summer holidays between my second and third year. And I know there's a lot of work that comes with kids, but because I was already working, I already had the companies, I already was doing uni. I was supported. My partner's family are massively hands-on. They're very supportive, which you need if you're going to have kids and be able to do anything else. But she just kind of had to fit in. So I've never really sat and thought, I've never really sat and thought like, oh, how or why did I layer that in? It sort of happened and we had to go with it. The second born was the moment at which I decided to go into consultancy, because I was doing weddings. Weddings are very, you don't have any holidays, you don't have any weekends. And especially with the kind of clientele I had, there's a lot of hand holding, a lot of communication that needs to go in. And I had I took my work to hospital, and I just had a cesarean, my second born. I was sat with him on my arms, and literally within a day of having this big abdominal surgery, and I had my laptop out, and this bride rang me. She said, I can't decide whether to choose between 200 baby blue cushions or 200 duck egg blue cushions. And we had a great relationship. She was a lovely person. And I had told her I was having a baby, but I hadn't put an out of office on or anything. And so I'm in this frigging hospital ward, helping her decide if she was just going to chuck them away, because that's what they do at these kind of weddings. How she was going to spend her 100 grand on, or however much on the decoration of the event. And I was like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. I'm not giving up my weekends and everything for this anymore. So that was a moment in which I decided to move to consultancy, because consultancy is a lot more flexible. You set your own hours, you can do it over Zoom, and you can be a lot more in charge of what happens. So it was a key decision for me.
Yeah, no, indeed. So let's just zoom in on the consultancy before we look at the AI, because AI is a tool now that is fundamentally useful in a lot of ways. But before then, I guess the same concept works. Like from before, the old guiding concept is you're seeing companies, and you can actually, and I'd like you to speak to this actually, just seeing the need and perceiving the need and bringing the need to the client, so just so that they've got full optics over where the gap that they can serve is, where their product market is for them, but also maybe even from a branding perspective, where the gap is, from a service provision perspective, where the gap is, and indeed just fulfilling that need. And that guiding principle you spoke of from selling cocktails on the street where no one else can see that need, you can see it, but then, like you said, that is mapped over time, and you can go to town on that in multiple different domains. Could you speak to how you did that within marketing and indeed consultancy?
Yeah, so over 5 years of doing consultancy, I would very much come into a company, and often, when you're in a jar, you can't see the label from the outside. So I'd be able to come in with a different perspective. And also, yes, I'm educated in marketing, and yes, I've been in business a long time, but I think being first and foremost a founder and a business owner gave me a different point of view than a marketing consultant, because I actually know what the company wants. So because that's what I want too. It's more money, more growth. And so for me, going in consultancy hat on, it wasn't just about making sure that we're ticking, making sure, are you doing your emails? Are you writing your copy? Are you, it was more about how are you actually communicating to get more out of these people, rather than are we just marketing here? So I have a different point of view to lots of marketeers who will very much hang their hat on marketing is not responsible for sales, marketing is not responsible for business outcomes, whereas I really believe that it is, and it can be. And so I would come in with quite a raw approach on, I don't want it, when I'd have consultancies, I want to know actually not just what they're doing in their marketing, but I want to know their conversion rates. I want to know their sales rates. I want to know when they got those sales. I want to know what the deficit is, so that we can try and plug the difference, instead of just looking at, let's make something cool that people will pay attention to.
No, indeed, absolutely, 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 and it's a circuit breaker for people, really, but so that they can stop, really zoom in and actually focus on something, because it is initially fundamentally a market of attention and holding people's attention, and then bringing the value add and the value proposition in afterwards is key. Inge, could I get you to speak to AI as a number of tools, really, because there is a number of platforms and indeed tools out there, and how you've harnessed AI, because it really is a revolutionary tool. How have you approached it and harnessed it?
So the idea for using AI came a year ago, because 2 years ago I set up my current company, which is called Clue Content, because I moved away from consultancy. I was fed up, honestly, fed up of telling people over and over again, do your content, do your content, do your content, do your content. And I noticed it got to a point where people can't do it anymore. They just, used to be able to throw up one video and get, one picture and get 3 clients off the back of it. You need to make mini adverts every time you post on social media now. And so I founded Clue, because no one's got a clue how to do it well. And I just thought, I'm just going to do it for people. Very quickly within Clue, we churn out thousands of videos a month now for our clients. You can start to see that patterns are produced, and you can be a marketeer and understand that there are things that work and there are things that don't work. But when you are creating that amount of content and sitting on the socials for that amount of time, you can really understand the patterns. But again, the patterns are not coming from hashtag algorithms or whether you posted at 8 o'clock at night or not. The patterns come from people. And so I wanted to understand what drives people to do something on socials from a human psychology point of view. Now, we have access to data. Everyone has access to data on social media, but you can't physically go through that amount of data as a human, and humans are set with bias. So my whole family are computer programmers, massive computer programming background, and AI sort of started to come into focus. And I realized, so we use AI, and we're developing out technology in the company that uses AI analysis, not generative AI, because you can give AI huge amounts of data, not just from social, but from loads of different data sets, and actually figure out what to do. And you can turn social media from being very reactive into being hyper predictable. So it's something that we use internally. We're bringing it out. We're going for a market launch next year, but AI for me is a huge analysis tool that is not built, doesn't have the bias. I mean, you could go really, really deep into this, but shouldn't have the bias that a human does. So you can be a lot more accurate in your marketing when you understand what works and what doesn't work based on human trends.
So let's look at that for a second, actually, and let's look at Clue content, because you have really started to benefit multiple, if not hundreds of small businesses, Inge, from your content creation with Clue content. And you, as you said, it's a unique approach. It's also about data points, but like you initially said, it's fundamentally knowing your audience. It's knowing who you're serving, and if you can get into people's heads who would be purchasing and buying, then actually you really start to understand from a customer perspective. Could you maybe speak to how you've kind of molded Clue content to really understand people better and therefore kind of really align products to those people?
So every audience is different depending on who we're working with. But fundamentally, humans are humans and we're apes. We like looking at people's faces. We like looking at people's emotions. And we are driven by education, entertainment, empathizing, or energizing types of content. And so if you, we've found with what we do in Clue, we create content for people. So we create up to 5 pieces of content a week for people. And the thing is that we like to think we're all unique and we create unique strategies for each company, but people are still the same. You see trends in economics, you see trends in healthcare, trends in finance, trends in census data, birth rates, everything. And so we're all driven by key principles. And if you can understand the key principle in relation to a product of a company, then you can talk to that instead of talking around the product. We never ever talk really about what the product is. If we always talk about the solution to a point of view. And that's different for each company, depending on who they're talking to. But we found that a lot of content product content doesn't work, people content does. And so if we can figure out what motivates the people, we can make it better.
So Inge, let's just pan back actually and just look at you for a second and just work-life balance. I'm famous for, and this podcast really is based on people thriving through adversity, and you really did have adversity in your formative years. One of the problems being is that you can, like you said before, throw yourself into businesses, throw yourself into work, and get lost in the malaise of exponential growth, actually. But my question is really, how do you find work-life balance, Inge? How do you strike a balance between a thriving business, family life, and managing to relax?
Managing to relax. I don't know if I'll ever really get there. Most definitely, I personally prefer to call it, instead of a balance, more of a synergy, because I think because of the way that I grew up in entrepreneurship and have had to adopt it, it's always been almost part of my fabric instead of it being a separate thing that I do. And so I do have to be very cautious and careful that it doesn't overtake a lot of the time, especially if I'm in a stage of a company where there's a big focus on growth. It can take a lot of time. But I heard a saying a long time ago, like, I'm not Jewish, but the Jews take a Sabbath on a Saturday. And for me, that works better than taking a slower Sunday. So Sundays, I like to get prepped for the week ahead. But most definitely, I'm very clear on putting stuff down on a Friday and not touching it until a Sunday. But it doesn't mean that I don't scroll social. Now, unfortunately, my whole life is in social media. So I spend all my time working, if you count checking social media. But it's hard. I don't think I'll ever get to a true balance, but I don't think I want to, because when it's your part of your fabric and part of your passion, and honestly, I'm addicted to the game. Each company has its own interesting things, but I just absolutely love building companies. That removing yourself from that is almost like, just, I don't know, if someone enjoyed reading, or if someone enjoyed painting, or if someone, and you told them, no, you need a work-life balance from that, it would feel odd. But just because my passion is a choice of work, it's hard for me.
It's really interesting you say that, because, like you said, an aligned passion doesn't almost feel like work, actually. It feels very much like a part of you. And actually, if it's not taking energy or too much energy away from you and probably giving energy to you, then there is a reciprocal, because I think people associate work-life balance with, taking time off from work for restoration, to restore. But actually, if work is giving back to you in a small part or a large part, there is a balance there. And like you said, it doesn't have to be a distinctive laptop down, let's walk away. Would you agree, or?
Some days it has to be like that,
Yeah,
definitely.
sure.
But uh, no, I agree. Most of the time, I mean, there was obviously some times where, but I guess again, it's the same as painting. You can start painting and just get frustrated with it and need to put your brushes down. But it definitely gives me more, and to be removed from it would be almost painful, I think.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Let's just talk about resilience and growth, Inga, if that's okay, because your journey is such a journey of rags to riches, and has been. You've shown a lot of being able to thrive through adversity and face numerous challenges. Could you maybe speak to, for listeners, could you maybe speak to some key lessons you've learned about resilience and personal growth for others that might be going through what is maybe a tough time?
Mm. Um, you can only grow as much as you can. If you can only, it's hard to say because it's all very related to business. And so if someone isn't necessarily doing a business, it might not be applicable. But in my experience, you can only grow a business as much as you grow yourself. So very much, if you have um, I've always learned very quickly that you just have to say yes to things and figure it out. And the worst that can happen, I think, when you've hit somewhere where you don't have anything, and it's almost, well, it's sort of, in inverted commas, your rock bottom, you know how to thrive there. And so thriving anywhere else is scary, and it can become almost a problem when you start to get successful, or you start to see something that works, because you don't know how to act there. Your body's much better at keeping you in a position where you are, where you know how to thrive. Like, I know how to be homeless, so I could be homeless for the rest of my life because that's what's actually comfortable, for my brain. I know logically it's not the right place to be, but every stage of growth of myself, of my companies, it's painful and it's hard, and I have to relearn how to communicate, how to act, how to sit comfortably in a new position. And I do that through a lot of mentorship and counseling, and talking to people. But definitely, if you're in a place where you don't feel comfortable, it's almost sometimes, and I don't, it's obviously very nuanced, but I've always found that when I feel most uncomfortable and most beaten, it's because I'm going through the most growth, and I have to let go and let myself be the next point, rather than staying where I am because something's pulling you into the next bit.
Listen, that's powerful for a number of reasons, actually, Inga. One is because, as you said before, I think everything could be removed from you. Your hugely successful business, your finances, your wealth, your network, and you could create it again, because it is a mindset, and it's an approach that actually is replicable. You can replicate it when you understand, like you say, some of the fundamental tenets of how people work and act, and you can see the gaps. And so I think that's a really key thing. But also, you said letting go, and letting the process change you, and not being afraid of changing for the better. Um, to adapt to where your company, your family needs you to be, and almost not being afraid of that change is also quite powerful, actually. And you know, and your journey is so varied and has it been iterative in so many ways. It's fantastic to see the flexibility in that regard, Inge. Yeah, as we come into land on the conversation, just a couple of questions, really. One quite personal, and then one about the future. And I guess my personal question to you really would be, because the first thing that parenthood gives is you know, you're a mentor, you're a mother, you're a parent, but you're a mentor to your children. And I guess, you know, very much an off script question, but I'm really fascinated to get your thoughts on whether your children see your flexibility, your resilience, your growth mindset, and whether they've adopted that, how it's changed them, what you've seen in them, or is it indeed too early to tell?
I think definitely my eldest, you can see. I think my experiences have shaped the way that I parent very much so. I will very well, there's a video even of my youngest trying to climb stairs on a bunk bed, and he must have only just been walking. And I was absolutely adamant I was not going to help him climb these steps. He got to the top and he was so pleased with himself. But I'm quite you know, I'll give boundaries to my children, but I am quite hands off in terms of not helping them overcome problems, not helping them do homework. I don't help them do things like that. And that might be wrong. I don't know. But in my experience, it's just made my kids more confident at every moment because they understand that they do have the tools inside of themselves. And my daughter now, my eldest, she's a phenomenal dancer. She dances like 6 times a week, and she takes part in competitions all around the country. And she's only 11. And to be able to stand on a stage and do that, which is that has nothing to do with me. And I do not stand over her. I don't critique her. It's all very much her. Means that she's totally, both of them really embrace their own passions, I think, and run with it. And I don't know, maybe it'll change when they turn teenagers. But so far, my hands-off approach and push for them to do more of what they are scared of helps them. But I don't know if having businesses, I don't know, they do talk about the businesses a lot sometimes and they're interested in them, but I don't know if it would make them, I don't know if they see the resilience in me. I think it's more of an echo of the way that I parent rather than observing it in me.
So just finally, Inge, could you maybe speak to your future plans? Just looking ahead, what are your future goals for indeed Clue Content and indeed any other entrepreneurial ventures that you're thinking about?
Oh, it's very set. I've been in business for 17 years now. I'm nearly done. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but I started young. So the whole point of Clue is to grow it to a huge valuation by the time I'm 40, which is 6 years away, and sell it and then turn around and invest in lots of different small companies, because the most entrepreneurial people I've ever come across were the girls that I stayed in hostel with, and they never get seen for, they always get charity, but they don't ever get investment. And charity, I think, can sometimes perpetuate a mentality of victimness, and whereas investment is more confidence bearing, it's more empowering, it's more seeing someone for the skills that they have. And so the money that I make from the company will all be turned around directly, reinvested. Some of it will obviously, I'll keep some of it for myself. I'd like a nice house, but then reinvested into specifically underrepresented people who have brilliant ideas but don't necessarily have the capital to bring it to life.
Listen, that's powerful. That's fantastic, Inge. And like you said, just what a fantastic way to reinvest in future potential of future people in similar situations in the past. Listen, that's brilliant. What we'll do, Inge, is put in the show notes links to Clue Content and indeed to the fantastic businesses that you're running, and indeed to your story, to your organic story, because I think there's real power in people reading and understanding your journey, which I absolutely did when I did research on you. So we'll put links to your story as well. But it just leaves me to say thank you for the past 45 minutes. It's great to walk through your life with you and also just reflect on your learning lessons, on the pearls of wisdom from different pivots in your life. So thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me. It was great.